Welcome to the most must-hear sports podcast in history. Welcome to First Round KO. I am your host, KO, aka Howard J. Dingers, and I'm joined, as always, by Hanson McIlvain.
We are getting higher and higher quality every time you see us.
Yeah, we are. Look at that. I actually got lighting now. And
yeah,
it's not just my bedside lamp hanging.
Like I have like this little corner. So you know how like news reporters all have their little corner in their house where they do all their stuff. Yeah. This is my corner now because it's like a diverse corner. So it's good for backlighting and everything. So
all of a sudden, Seattle has the lead. As always,
there's only 2 scores. So
I mean, yeah, but that was quick. They just scored 2 touchdowns in like a minute.
Well, considering they were down 2 scores and Russ didn't miss a throw the entire game so far, they were bound to come back.
Yeah, so as always on Sundays, we're recording during Sunday Night Football. We're about halfway through, a little more than halfway, or a little less than halfway through the second half here. We actually have a lot to talk about, so we're probably not going to dive too deep into most of these games. We're just going to talk about the big headlines. We are still going to go through every game, but we're only going to touch on them pretty quickly because there's actually a lot that happened.
We're like, there's not that much that went on, and that was like, 4 hours ago? And there's been 2 firings, an NBA champion, a season-ending injury of a contract player, maybe even some trade possibilities popping up now.
Huge scheduling issues when it comes to the NFL.
Yeah, which we called that because Pat called it, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
You agreed and repeated
with Pat.
Like
yes. Yeah. Well, Pat did the same thing, so we're all getting our information from somebody.
I can't wait to listen to Pat tomorrow. So yeah, I mean, we're going to start with the NBA Finals. That's kind of it weirdly isn't the biggest thing, but I think it's because of how non-competitive the game was. I mean, it was a blowout from the beginning.
Well, in the second quarter, I was watching with a couple buddies, and we're all like, just wait, Jimmy's going to come back in the second half. Just wait. But then you remember Jimmy was like, it sounded like they had to carry him up to his room after he walked out for his interviews. I don't know if you saw the video. But I
just saw the picture of him just like leaning on the score table.
So after his interviews post game, he couldn't bend his knees walking down the stairs. He was so sore.
Because he was averaging? He was averaging 46 minutes this finals.
Well, so that last game he sat 48 seconds.
Jeez.
And it was in like the third quarter.
I mean, you got to commend the guy. I mean, Kawhi Leonard kind of did the same thing last year. But geez, I mean, it kind of showed. I don't know. It looked like he didn't have, what he had in the last few games. He obviously was a little exhausted, and the Lakers just kind of wanted it more.
Well, you know who their number 2 scorer was
tonight?
Well, in their last game where they won, the last 2 actually, Duncan Robinson. And when your undrafted Division III sharpshooter is your second leading scorer, I know he's been playing fantastic. It's just not sustainable. And I understand that Miami is the work ethic team and you have guys that pop up out of nowhere being your second, third scorer, but you can't expect that to happen every single game. So when you're playing against arguably the best of all time in LeBron James, with who could arguably be considered one of the best teammates of all time in Anthony Davis, at least in this pairing, you can't bank on some maybe option coming up out of nowhere to beat these guys. It's just not healthy. It's not a healthy, sustainable way to run a franchise.
Yeah. Lakers looked real good. Obviously, I think this was the best outcome for the NBA only because of what happened 8 months ago. I mean,
the only thing that would have been better is if they were wearing the Black Mamba jerseys. Literally would have been it.
That would have been pretty cool. I mean, it's still a shocker that happened. I mean, it's already 8 months ago.
It doesn't seem real, yeah.
Exactly. So why are they celebrating now? Jeez. It's crazy to think about, and so it feels really good for the Bryant family. There's probably there's smiles on the faces. I'm sure LeBron is extremely emotional right now. I saw him crying almost immediately. J.R. Smith took his shirt off before the clock was done. Yep.
2 seconds, yeah.
So yeah, good for the Lakers. They tie the Celtics for all-time titles at 17.
Yeah, and you know what? There is a really good chance next year's finals are going to be Lakers Celtics.
That'd be pretty cool.
I mean, if you think about the progression of the teams, if Anthony Davis stays in LA, because there's a chance he could still leave. So, because his contract is up. So
if I'm him, I'm staying for sure.
I mean, you won your chip with LeBron. Now you go prove that you could do it on your own.
Stay with LeBron and win a few more.
That's you really have to think about that though. If you're Anthony Davis, you are in your absolute prime.
Yeah, so stay with LeBron for sign a 2-year deal, or just a 1 year with a player option or something. Stay there for another year, win another title, and then leave or something. That's what I would do. Why not?
Maybe, but I guess it'd be looking more like a team where he was in New Orleans and he didn't want that, but he got his ring though. That's the thing. What I'm trying to get the point I'm trying to get across is as soon as you get a ring, everything changes.
Yeah.
And that's how it works in life. You get married, you put a ring on it for some reason, everything fucking changes. Doesn't have to, but it does. And when you win a ring, especially when you're the second fiddle, and a guy like Anthony Davis, who we're aware has some ideas in his head that he's one of the best in the world, which he arguably is, he might want to go prove that now. Because even next season, LeBron in his 18th year at 36, 37 years old, guess who's still the number one option on that team?
Still Anthony Davis.
Well, it's LeBron's team is what I'm getting at.
Well, yeah. But
do you want to be, it's LeBron's team and Anthony Davis was his number one guy. Do you want to be Pippen to Jordan?
Why not? At least for another year and then go prove it. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying he has to spend his career with the Lakers or with LeBron.
But the thing is, now if you try to go another year, you do what Kevin Durant did, you tear your Achilles. Now, Kevin Durant got really lucky where he still had contract value, and Anthony Davis probably would too, but you're starting to look at, maybe not so much down the line. So you just, there's risks and stuff that you're taking. If I were him, I would look at a team that has potential cap space to build for the future in an income state free area.
It'll be an interesting offseason, and obviously that's going to start almost immediately. Like, it's going to be a crazy month, like for the NBA. I think it's going to be wild. I can't wait to get into it because, offseason is usually the fun part, and it's going to be even more fun because it's going to be so compact. Who
are the free agents? We can quick hit that really fast. I want to see that.
That's a really good question.
Anthony Davis, I know, is one.
Yep.
NBA. It's going to be kind of a mess because they don't really have a lot of time. DeMarcus Cousins. But that's kind of known. Let's see, 2020 free agents: Gordon Hayward, Paul Millsap, DeMar DeRozan. It wouldn't surprise me if we really. I guess it could be kind of last thing we end on in the NBA. Who do you think the Bucks are going to end up now with a point guard? Because they're going to be getting a point guard of some kind. Do you think they try to go for Chris Paul and make that monster trade happen? Because that seems like it's the most realistic thing right now.
I've already seen that they're not interested in Chris Paul. I don't know.
Giannis isn't, or the Bucks aren't?
Giannis apparently was high on it, but apparently the Bucks aren't. That's what I saw a few weeks ago.
Well, that's bad then, because
I don't agree. I don't know. See, in my mind, you just I don't know. You don't necessarily need a big name like that. Like, I think DiVincenzo has been good enough where you can run, and Giannis obviously runs point a lot too, where you can just run that. Like, DiVincenzo is the one, but Giannis runs the ball, but so does I don't know if we necessarily need a big name point guard specifically rather than other positions and more depth. I don't know.
Well, then maybe it's not a point guard. Maybe it's a guy like DeMar DeRozan that brings up the ball and he can space out the floor. Yeah. Because DeMar DeRozan's a good 6'6", 6'7". He's a 3, but he's got hands, man. He was a point guard in Toronto. The thing about Bledsoe is he can't play well in the playoffs. We saw that in the bubble this year. We saw that in the playoffs last year. And we saw that when the whole time he was in Phoenix, he tended to have issues there. And when he was playing behind Chris Paul in LA, he even had issues then, but we just let it be because he was young. And now he can't make that excuse anymore. He's in a situation where he has the opportunity to shine and he's not making the most of it. It puts a lot of pressure on a franchise to then go, now this is going to be the third time that we're going to give him this opportunity. Are we going to risk it with our last year with Giannis when he hasn't made any concrete promises that he's staying? You don't take that risk. You go and get another point guard. You basically get whoever the fuck Giannis wants. That's not even like an exaggeration. Never in NBA history except for maybe the exemption of LeBron and possibly maybe even Michael Jordan, but it was different in the 90s. Has a franchise listened to one player so much about the moves they're making? Never has this happened to this extent, with the exception of LeBron.
One of LeBron's quote that just came out. I want my damn respect too. Woo!
We were talking about this before we recorded. I'm still on the idea that Michael Jordan's the greatest of all time, because LeBron hasn't won enough in the finals. That's such a small thing to argue about at that point. Like, if there's a Mount Rushmore, they're right next to each other. It doesn't fucking matter.
They're 1 and 2. You could call them 1, 2, or 1.
Honestly, they're 1 and 1, and then it's 3, and then it's Magic. So it's not even like it's hard to argue.
If I would have thought about it, I would have threw one of my Lakers jerseys on, but I kept my Colts jersey on, not because they won, because they didn't win, but because
Rip Dak.
Do you know what jersey this is?
Is that your kicker?
Pat McAfee.
Oh, is that a Pat jersey?
It is a Pat McAfee jersey, and I'm wearing it because the draft pick that Pat announced 2 years ago, Bobby Okereke, had an interception today.
Nice.
Just had to throw that out there. Pat called him a future Hall of Famer when he announced him for the draft.
That's a good start. He's got to start somewhere.
He's been a solid middle linebacker. I actually really like him, especially when Darius Leonard was out for this game. Anyway, yeah, we'll get to that game, and now we're going to move into the rest of the Sunday slate games, because not a lot happened as far as the games, but there's just
which is perfect for a bye week for us.
Right. But there's a lot of just tidbits and news stories that are going into this. So we'll just kind of hit them as we go. The Jacksonville Jaguars lost to the Houston Texans. The Texans getting their first win in their first game without Bill O'Brien. This looked like a different Texans team. They looked
together.
They almost looked relieved. They looked together. And, I think this is good for the whole Texans organization. I think this is the right step. Now, this is against the Jaguars, so I don't think they're necessarily going to turn around. They're one of those
teams so that they're a pain in the ass.
No, they are.
They love to stick around.
But the Texans have also beaten the Jaguars 7 times in a row now. So they're not. I don't think
confidence when it's an NFL team.
I don't think they're going to turn the team around. I don't think they're going to make playoffs or anything. But this is a big win for them, and this kind of brings in a lot of confidence in a lot of players and in the organization as a whole. So
you hit the nail on the head with that.
Let's go Panthers Falcons. We might as well, because big news coming out of Atlanta. Dan Quinn was finally fired. Yeah, because here's why it's big news, is because we thought this was going to happen last year.
Well,
and somehow they went on a streak and Dan Quinn kept his job. And then all of a sudden, just the same. Here's the thing about Dan Quinn and about kind of the culture change that we're seeing in the NFL. He's a defensive coach. And when you're a defensive coach, you need to have a good defense, because you should, because that's the expectation. But you also need to bring in an offensive minded guy to be your coordinator, whether you keep someone there or you bring in someone like you during your interview, you'd be like, you hire me. This is who my offensive coordinator is going to be, so that we don't have to. So that I don't struggle in that department. I'll have a guy there. It didn't seem like Dan Quinn had that, because the offense seemed to struggle a lot. And the defense wasn't good, especially the past 2 years. And when you're a defensive coach, like, there's not a lot of argument for you to stay. I'm surprised he lasted this long. I'm glad he's gone too, because it just hasn't been good for this Falcons team, who is extremely talented. Like, they should be so much better than they are. But good for the Panthers. They're 3-2 now without Christian McCaffrey. I think they're looking real good too. I still like their offense, especially when CMC comes back.
I mean, they're an offensive heavy team with a defensive coach that just doesn't function well. And when you, like you said before, I think I'm going to keep it brief. You said that when you have a defensive coach, you have to have a defensive roster, and that goes for any sport. And football is probably the biggest proponent of that. Like, you need to have a good defensive minded coach. And obviously, this season of all seasons, with scoring being the highest it's ever been, they should have made moves that they didn't. And that's more than just on the coach's shoulders. That's also in the organization. So it's beyond him, but definitely some coaching issues. It was the right move.
I mean, the biggest example of that is when you look at Rex Ryan and what he did with the Jets. I mean, other than Mark Sanchez, can you name anyone on that Jets offense from those AFC championship
and why
series?
do you know who Sanchez is?
It's because they had a great defense and a well-built team that knew what they were doing. He
wasn't that great of a quarterback by any stretch.
No,
at
not
all.
at all.
Like he's Tim Tebow level.
But they went to like 2 straight AFC championship games, 3 straight or something like that.
Because they built a damn good roster with a really good coach, but the two mixed well. Exactly. And that's what we're seeing in Green Bay right now. That like we don't have the best receiving core in the world, but we got the best damn quarterback and a coach that gets along so well with him.
You know who is the defensive coordinator for those Jets? Mike Patton, Packers defensive coordinator. Let's move on to the Bengals and the Ravens. I mean, oh boy, Joe Burrow. This was rough. I mean, Ravens just absolutely trounced them 27-3. At least they didn't go scoreless.
Well, here's what I'll say. Joe Burrow has to learn how to lose still. I think that's a mental thing you have to learn how to do when you've been winning your whole life. Yeah. So I think this is a really good learning experience for him.
The takeaway for this, if you really want to look at the silver lining, this Bengals defense held the Ravens to 27 points. They never really got going.
Like, there's a lot of bright futures on that orange team.
Like, yeah, I was actually really impressed with how the Bengals kind of managed to slow down Lamar. And I don't know if that's just a trend that we're going to see in the NFL because Lamar hasn't had the greatest season. Like, I believe
Lamar's turning the ball over,
yeah. And Lamar's also bottom 30 in passing stats. Like, I know he's not a primary.
Yeah, that's this thing.
But he should be though. Like he can't rely on his legs because people are already starting to figure out.
Not when you have to throw when you're an MVP.
Yeah. So I wouldn't worry too much about the Bengals still. I mean, we've talked about that all year. I wouldn't worry about the Bengals in general.
Mixon's got to be a little bit more active. He's got to just play better.
He was also on the injury report this week. So there might have been something there.
Nursing something.
Yeah, for sure. The Raiders upset the Chiefs to hand Kansas City, their first loss this year.
That was one of the only games I actually watched today for the most part.
It was a really fun game to watch. I mean, 40-32. I mean, the AFC West is wide open now because the Raiders have 2 pretty big upsets in the Saints and the Chiefs now. They look like a good team because their defense is playing well. And when their wide receiver core is healthy, which it's not going to be all season because Tyrell Williams is out for the season, but Henry Ruggs and the rest of this, and Darren Waller, who's just an amazing tight end, like these guys have been really good. Aguilar has even been really good with a 59-yard touchdown, and Ruggs with that 72-yard touchdown towards the end of the game. And one of the best backs in football right now, Josh Jacobs, in my opinion. This team is built to do some damage, and they're going to be annoying like the Jaguars, but they're going to win more than they lose at this point. Like they're going to be that tough kind of annoying where they're going to be a lot of upsets in their future.
Most definitely.
As far as the Chiefs go though, I mean, again, not worried. Like they
needed to lose. That's what that was. They needed to lose to kind of get get centered and kind of focus.
Yeah, they'll be okay going forward. I still expect them to probably win the division. But I could see the Raiders now sneaking into that one of those wild card spots.
Well, yeah, and watch for the Raiders to get hot in the postseason because the Raiders are one of those teams that would get hot in the postseason and really piss some people off.
For sure. Not a lot to talk about here. The Cardinals beating the Jets 30-10. It's good to see the Cardinals get back on track.
Guess who was the last team to win in MetLife Stadium?
I mean the Cardinals.
The Guardians. The last home team.
Like the home team?
Yeah, home team to win is the Guardians. The XFL tweeted that today. They're still cheesing them.
Our Guardians were my team too. I hope they keep that because
they're keeping all the teams.
Good on Dwayne. Good on Dwayne. Love that.
I think they might be adding a couple too.
Wouldn't mind that at all.
I'll say Milwaukee might be getting one, so keep an eye out.
Ooh. I'll still be a Guardians.
They're a good medium-sized market, so
that'd be great.
Baby.
Like I said, not too much to say here because it was Joe Flacco still at quarterback. We still don't know what Sam Darnold's going to be doing.
Hey, I'm telling you, Joe Flacco's the most underrated backup quarterback in the NFL.
Adam Gase, though.
By
that. We had Bill O'Brien and Dan Quinn, who definitely deserve to be fired, but Adam Gase, I would hire those two before Adam Gase any day of the week. Like, I still don't understand how he has a job.
Yeah.
The Steelers beat the Eagles 38-29. Steelers, one of the last few undefeated teams. We'll see what happens tomorrow. The Tuesday night football. God, I forgot there's football tomorrow night, or in 2 nights. There's football tomorrow and on Tuesday. That'll be awesome. But we'll see because those two teams on Tuesday are undefeated. So we'll see what happens there. But as of right now, I believe it's the Packers, the Steelers, the Bills, the Titans, and the Seahawks, which the Seahawks look like they're going to hold on. They're looking to really fire up here with the injury to Dalvin Cook. So I don't know. The Steelers, their offense looks great, obviously putting up 38 points. Chase Claypool. How do the Steelers? I don't think the Steelers have drafted a receiver higher than the third round in like years, because Antonio Brown was a late round guy. Juju Smith-Schuster was a late round guy. Mike Wallace, all these guys, Hines Ward, and now Chase Claypool. All these guys were late round, like third round and below.
I would say because Juju Smith-Schuster was like the last one I could think of, I guess, and then Hines Ward was another one that came to my head. But like they were both late round. Because Juju was like an 8th, wasn't he?
I guess I don't remember, but I know that I've seen that stat somewhere. Maybe it wasn't first round. Maybe one of them was a second round or something like that. But still, like the fact that they're able to find all these guys has just been. And Deontay Johnson, obviously too. Like he's been great too. Guy out of Toledo. Shout out Toledo. The big
second round on Juju.
Okay, that's what I figured. So he's probably the highest drafted receiver that they've had in a while.
Yeah.
The biggest story in this game to me was the Steelers defense, which statistically was the second best defense in the league, but they're obviously one of the better ones. They couldn't really handle this depleted Eagles team who has been struggling all year, but the Eagles actually did really well. I mean, Carson Wentz looked good. They put up 29 points. This is probably one of their better offensive games of the year.
It just had to come against the Steelers.
Right?
Yeah. Carson Wentz just looked out of control. Some of those times when he was getting like, you know how there's quarterbacks that are composed when they're getting sacked? Carson Wentz looks like the little kid running away on the playground from the guys when they're trying to sack him. You know what I mean? Like quarterbacks are supposed to be in control of the game, and Carson Wentz is never that guy. And like I've said all season, they picked the wrong guy. We all know it. So
I want you to remind me of that when we get to the Giants and the Vikings. Remind me of what you just said there.
What?
Because I had the same exact thought when it comes to other quarterbacks.
Oh, Kirk Cousins, yeah.
Yeah, and Daniel Jones.
Yeah. Well, Daniel Jones is young.
Yeah, but it's been a major problem. The Rams took on the football team. Okay, the Rams won 30-10. I don't care about any of that.
Yeah.
Alex Smith played football today.
He did.
Give him the comeback player of the year. I don't care. Give him the comeback player of the year. It's done. He won the award. He hadn't taken I thought it was so funny that he hadn't taken a hit at all in practice all week, like all season, that he has never taken a hit since the injury. And they had to throw him in because Kyle Allen was out they thought it was a concussion. He ended up getting cleared, but Alex Smith stayed in. He looked decent. I mean, he didn't look bad. And for his first game, his leg looked to be holding up strong. He got tackled a few times by Aaron Donald. So if he can take that, I think he's good. It was really funny. Also, I shouldn't say funny. It was interesting to see his family was there, his wife and his 3 kids, and his wife did not like seeing him in the game.
Horrified every time he gets hit.
Oh my God.
You should have retired.
Meanwhile, the little daughter was just standing there next to her dancing, cheering for her dad.
You know, his wife is sitting over there like, you dumbass, you know you don't got to be playing right now, but you love the game. You just gotta play because you love the game.
Right.
He's made enough money to fucking retire. He hasn't got to keep playing. He had a Tua injury, a Tua level injury. And he's back playing football. Worse than Tua, arguably, especially at his age.
He had a Joe Theismann type injury.
Yeah, like career ending. And
if it weren't for modern medicine, in 2 places.
Yeah, modern medicine's the reason he's back. And it was his femur, wasn't it? Like his femur and like one of his the 2 bones in his lower leg. That was gross too. Like
it was terrible.
Yeah. So good on him though for coming back.
Great on him. It was super emotional. Like the guys on Red Zone were talking about how they had goosebumps the entire time that he was in. Like I did too. Like I was.
What for that franchise? Uplifting.
It was just awesome to see. It was a really cool, heartfelt moment. Bigger than the game, that one. Another quarterback story here in this one. The Dolphins beating the 49ers 43-17.
That's not where I thought you were going with that, but that's a better one.
I didn't mess this up. The Dolphins beat the 49ers 43-17. It's the first time
that quarterback story. I didn't realize we were going to talk about Jimmy Garoppolo taking a shit.
We're going to get to that because I actually let's talk. Well, the Dolphins look good. Like Fitzmagic's great. Like he said earlier in the week that he wants more explosive plays from the Dolphins, and that's exactly what they got. The Dolphins played an all around great game, probably the best of the Brian Flores era. Like they looked really good. But we talk about I want to talk about the 49ers because Jimmy did not look like he should not have come back. He could not put any pressure on that foot, and you could tell because he was not planting. He was not putting pressure on that foot. He wasn't getting set on his throws, and he overthrew a lot of guys. He had a quarterback rating. I think he was 7 of 17 with 2 interceptions. I believe his quarterback rating was 15.7.
You are 100% correct. I am looking at the stat line right now.
I'm a stats monster. I
sacked 3 times.
And they replaced him in the second half with CJ Beathard, but they did say, I mean, this is what the 49ers said, so we'll take it with a pinch of salt, but the 49ers said this was for Jimmy's health because I believe that they realized what I realized is that he isn't 100%. We're going to lose this game already because we're down so big. Let's take Jimmy out so that he doesn't get hurt in this game, the basically meaningless game at that point. Let's take him out and get him healthy for next week. And maybe, who knows, maybe he'll sit another week because he did not look good.
The cortisone shot weared off. That's what happened.
Must have been. He just never got going though. The people were saying rust, but he only missed like 2 weeks.
You know what I'm thinking? I think he warmed up really well and then he must have stopped. And ankles are the worst. And ankles and feet, like as soon as you get them warm and then you stop moving, oh, God rest your soul trying to get around anywhere because it turns into stone. It takes like 3-4 times as long to warm up an injured ankle or foot. So yeah, it's probably smart if he sits out.
And we're going to talk about ankles here in a little bit. Let's talk first. Let's first talk about the Colts and the Browns. This was a really good back and forth game. I mean, a really good offense against a really good defense, and the offense kind of won as we normally see in these battles. I believe the stats when you look at good offenses versus good defenses, normally the offense does win. And this Colts defense, who's been really good all season, just couldn't slow down Cleveland early, and then it was just kind of a battle of who can make the least amount of mistakes in the fourth quarter. And unfortunately, Phillip Rivers lost that battle. But I mean, Baker and this offense still look good even without Nick Chubb. Like Baker looks. There were still a couple throws where Baker did not look good, but for the most part, this season Baker has looked incredibly better.
And upper middle quarterbacks where he is, or I guess he's like middle of the pack, just about. Baker's about as middle gets. When you've got 5 receivers that you're throwing the ball to, and they're getting 3 receptions at least a game, 5 different guys. That's how mediocre quarterbacks win games, is when you get everybody involved because you keep the defense on their toes. And Indianapolis is one of the best defenses in the league. And when you keep them guessing, that's how you get any good defense to not necessarily play at their best game. So really good move on Baker, dispersing the ball evenly. I'm sure that's also a testament to their play calling.
Yeah. I mean, still look for the Colts to have a pretty successful season. I think
they're still Super Bowl threats. They're the Colts. Their defense is fantastic.
I don't get why they don't give Jonathan Taylor the ball more. Like I still see Hines and Wilkins in there way too much.
Bad coaching, man.
It really seems to be like, I don't get it. When they had Marlon Mack last year, like, yeah, we saw Hines every once in a while, but we never saw Wilkins last year. It was Marlon Mack. And
I think it's because he's a rookie.
I get that, but man, when the stats are so in favor of Jonathan Taylor over the other two,
such a stigma of rookies that aren't like top level quarterbacks or wide receivers.
But with running backs, the prime, like this is the prime for Jonathan Taylor. This is their prime age, is their first 3 or 4 seasons.
I'll say he's already been in it like the last 2 seasons,
and he's a workhorse. Like I just don't get why they don't use him more.
He is a guy that gets better the more you use him.
Yeah,
Fine wine.
I don't get it, but I mean, hey, the Browns are looking good. That NFC North division is
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like, especially with in a few years when the Bengals are good, holy shit. I mean, I don't know how long Big Ben's still going to be there, but I mean, this is going to be a 3-horse race for this division for a long time to come, I think.
You know what? Good on Cleveland for getting there too. They've been through a lot of shit. So to build this roster, they've done a good job.
I agree. All right. The New York Giants lost to the Dallas Cowboys 37-34. Dak Prescott went down with 6.5 minutes to go in the game, I believe, with a just gruesome ankle injury. I believe, I'm forgetting. I'll bring up the actual Adam Schefter tweet here to see what the actual injury was. I think it was a dislocation.
It was a dislocated ankle with
a compound fracture.
Yeah, a compound fracture with a tendon tear. So now here's the thing. What we haven't gotten word on is what his Achilles looks like.
Oh God, I didn't even think about
it. What you have to. So now I'm gonna bring back a rough memory that most of the country watched. Kevin Ware, Louisville. So when that's an example of a compound fracture. When the compound fracture is when the bone breaks completely, and there a common side effect of that is skin protrusion, so it breaks through.
And Dax did break through.
Yes, it did, and luckily there was a sock that was in the way. But the issue with the ankle is when you break bone is sharp, it's hard, and the way in which you did it in the twisting motion, there's a lot of moving parts that are not bone in your ankle, and that's also a movement that's very common with tearing your Achilles. And so there's a chance that not only did he has confirmed dislocated, compound fractured, and tore some sort of ligaments in his ankle.
Yeah, and
you throw an Achilles on that, and this is a contract year. Now here's the thing, Jerry Jones, if you don't pay this man, because here's the thing, he went out there to prove himself to you. He literally put his body on the line. If Jerry Jones is going to sit up there like the slave owner that he treats himself like he is, and he doesn't pay this man.
You got my leg hurting bringing up Kevin Ware. God damn.
But this is a more serious injury than that because of all of the meat and tendons involved in the ankle. I should say the tendons involved in the ankle. There's a lot more things that could go wrong. And I think one of the scariest parts about football is not just the way you get hit, but the way you're planted when you get hit. Yep. Because you have to remember, football cleats are, 3 inches regularly. And in the rain, they're sometimes up to 5 or 5.5 inches. And these turf fields, they played on an artificial turf field, I believe, today when this happened. Where were they playing?
Yeah, they must have been at Dallas because the Jets were at home.
Yes, so that means those fields are designed to stick in and have really good contact. And there's little rubbery bits in those fields.
Yep.
They get caught and stuck, and you can't move. And so his foot plants and just breaks. And so it's complete separation. It would not surprise me if it's an Achilles injury too, on top of it, and that takes him out almost 2 full years.
Man, I didn't even think about the Achilles. I mean, I didn't even hear about the tendons too, but it didn't even cross my mind because just the compound fracture and the dislocation and everything like that. And another thing that was brought up, Mike Florio at halftime of the Sunday night game, because it broke the skin, there's also fear of infection. Especially
luckily the sock, his whole sock and stuff is over it though. So
right. No, I know, but there's still that huge, especially in these first 24 hours, there's still that huge risk of infection. So the doctors are going to have to keep an eye on that. He was in the hospital before the game was even done. He was there. His brother posted a picture of him smiling. So, I mean, he's in good spirits at least. But man,
and you know what? They got a quarterback down there. So,
yeah.
I mean, who's their backup right now? Do they have Andy Dalton?
Yeah, it's Dalton.
Yeah, so they've still got a quarterback, arguably one that might be better than McCarthy's system. Now, I'm not saying that it had to take for Dak to completely destroy his foot and maybe his career for it to happen.
Dak was on a record-setting pace.
I was about to say he started to look good, and that's where this gets super unfortunate. Is right when he had to start looking good.
I'm not a Dak fan, not at all. I've been against him ever since he got drafted. He hasn't impressed me. He puts up the big numbers, but it feels like it's because of the talents around him. But I'm putting that aside because this is a terrible thing to happen to a really good guy. Like Dak, the person, I've really come to respect over the past year because of all the things he dealt with his brother over the past year, and everything that he had to go through with the media too. I really hope that no one jumps on this. But like you could see the outpouring support when he was being carted off the field. The entire team went to him. The entire team was down on a knee. The Giants were down on a knee. That everyone was just in shock and just wholly disappointed that this happened. And what was actually a cool moment was Jason Garrett, who's obviously the former Cowboys head coach. He's now the offensive coordinator for the Giants. He went over to Mike McCarthy and they were kind of consoling each other while this happened too. It's just that it's heartbreaking. Like I said, I'm not a Dak fan. I don't think he should have got paid that money, but at the end of the day, this is nothing. You never want to see this kind of thing, like ever, to any type of player.
And the thing about, like you said, Dak the person is just on a different level of good human. So it sucks because there's guys that don't deserve this, and there's guys in every professional sports league that are unanimously loved by everybody, no matter who they are. And Dak is that guy. Like nobody hates Dak. So the fact that this has to happen to him just really sucks.
It was very unfortunate. I'm glad they got the win, honestly.
Yeah, definitely.
They're still only 2-3. I don't know. They're probably still going to win the division. Because this division is terrible.
Well, Andy Dalton's a fucking good quarterback.
Andy Dalton's good.
That.
Yeah.
He's kind of Aaron Rodgers-y, depending like the way Mike McCarthy could use him.
Didn't he lead the Bengals to like 4 straight playoff games?
Yeah. People fail to realize just because they're in Cincinnati doesn't mean they weren't making playoff games.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow's inherited a good team with a really good wide receiver in AJ Green. So yeah.
So thoughts out to Dak.
Yeah, man, that's
just terrible. So this game unfortunately isn't done yet. But we're still going to talk about it because if anything, we're going to have 2 games to talk about on Thursday too. So we can kind of wrap up our final thoughts come Thursday when we record too. Minnesota literally just scored with 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter to go up 25. Well, maybe 26-21 here. We'll see.
It's 26-21.
Okay, cool. Yeah. You made the extra kick. Oh yeah. I see it on my phone now.
But Russell Wilson's gonna win the game, so this
was a game of 2 halves, like, and we don't even know how it's gonna end. But like the Seahawks went scoreless. It was 13-0 at halftime.
Well, they just didn't they just didn't get in a rhythm. Like Russell Wilson looked great, but rest of the team just didn't look hot.
And like, kudos to the Vikings on their game plan because they won time of possession. I don't know the actual numbers. I haven't actually seen them, so I don't know if they actually won time of possession. But just looking at the stats. Or at like specifically Seattle stats, like Chris Carson had
the only way. Yeah.
Chris Carson had 3 carries and Russell was perfect. He didn't have an incomplete pass.
7 for 7 in the first half. Yeah.
But somehow they didn't score at all. Like not even a field goal. Like that's crazy to me. So good on the Vikings. The Vikings are getting better. Like Justin Jefferson, the emergence of him, like he was obviously a great draft pick for them. I'm still not a fan of Kirk. Like he's made a couple bad plays, especially in the second half. I still like the Seahawks to win this. Like you said, I think Russ, it's going to come down to which quarterback do you trust to win the game. I trust Russ way more than I trust Kirk, especially on prime time.
Especially I think on top of that, Russ knows his teammates better.
Yeah.
And in situations like this, when you're on prime time, there's potential for playoff spots to be on the line here. Like this is a really important game. So at least, because let's be real, if the Vikings lose this game, they're probably done for the season. Like this is really their last chance. So there's a lot riding on this for them as well. And Kirk Cousins too, because this is kind of his last chance to show off what he's got for the rest of his career. Because if he doesn't win here, he's going to end up in the Andy Daltons of the world. And to Andy Dalton's credit, that's the no fault of his own. That's just the market he was in, the situation that teams are finding themselves in with quarterbacks.
Yeah. All right. To wrap up here tonight, and maybe waste a little bit of time to see if this game unfolds a little more. Let's talk about these rescheduling conflicts that the NFL is going through, because I don't even know. All I saw was that the game was rescheduled. What happened in New England?
No, they're just giving them more. They're giving them more time for quarantining and healing and stuff. They're just giving them extra time. There haven't been any more positive tests or anything.
Okay, that's good.
But what I'll say is, I give the NFL credit, because the NFL is the most expensive operation in professional sports in the world, more than soccer, and that's the second closest, and I think cricket would probably be third, and maybe rugby. Like these international sporting events get wild, but I think by far football is the most expensive sport in the world to run, and the fact that the NFL is able to switch games and still being able to hold them and like run them out properly, a week out, is extraordinarily impressive. And I think Roger Goodell has really been focusing on having strong communication, because that's the only way something like this works. Because everyone from the top down has to be bought into a system, like on a sports team, to run this fluidly. And I honestly, the NFL hasn't looked this good, like operations wise, in a really long time, and it's in the middle of a global pandemic, and they've got outbreaks on a couple teams, and yet it still seems like this is the smoothest the NFL's been running in a long time. You know what I mean? Are you starting?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, Goodell's doing a great job right now, like, which I never thought I'd say that.
No, for sure. And well, because I think to that point, like, with this schedule change for this week, they had to rearrange, I believe, 8 different teams in like 8 different weeks. There's a lot of games that have to be shuffled around. And that includes bye weeks. Like, that's going to throw off a lot of plans, but it's kind of what we have to do. And the big thing is the big discussion now is adding an 18th week. And the NFL has talked about it. Now,
I think it should have been a plan all along. Like,
here's what the NFL, so they've talked about it. What they're saying is it's a last resort. If another game gets rescheduled, they don't want to do it because it affects a lot of, like, I don't know. It's very complicated to add that last week. You'd have to push a lot of things back. There's going to be a lot of rescheduling.
Playoffs. Yeah.
Well, and because what happens if if the Titans have to cancel one more game, like then you might
19th.
Exactly. And they don't want to get that ball rolling.
So I understand that. I do. I really do.
But they're open to it. But if they need to do it, they're going to do it.
Okay,
that's my point.
Now, I'm going to think a little bit more from a cynical business end. I really like the idea of a week 18.
I mean, I'd get more football, so I'd be fine with it.
You get more football.
Well, technically not. It's spread out more football, I guess.
Well, but the advertising dollars are different, because if it's a single one-off game, especially if it's a single one-off game in prime time, you're telling me that if there's only 3 games in week 18, they're not all primetime games.
Well, I mean, just think about this week specifically. I can imagine CBS is probably asking a lot of money for this Tuesday night. Yeah. Like
Saturday.
Is there going to be Saturday after?
I don't know, but I think they were talking about it. I don't know if they ended up changing it. Let me see.
I see 2 Monday night games next week. Yeah.
Yeah. Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a possibility that we get some Saturdays, especially because, like, if a team gets pushed back to Monday because of COVID, but they have a Thursday night game, like, that could either get pushed back to Saturday or Sunday, depending on what their next week's schedule is. Like, there's a lot of balancing going on. And I think you're right. I think the NFL is handling this beautifully at this point.
Way better than we were expecting them to.
Oh, for sure.
And what's really nice too is all of the really good college teams playing on Saturdays aren't playing in prime time anymore. They're playing earlier in the day, which is something.
Do you see what game was this Saturday night?
No. What is it?
Georgia, Bama.
I bet you that's why they're not doing Saturday Night Football this week then, because that's something that ESPN and Pat have been talking about, where they were talking about how they can do Saturday night games because they're not doing the major schools on primetime on Saturdays anymore. They're all playing in the middle of the day, which makes true. Like Clemson's been playing at like noon to 4:00 every weekend. So
well, that's because they're not necessarily getting like when it's a matchup like Bama Georgia where they're 2-3 right now. Like then you're gonna
and there's not a lot of those matchups because of COVID. So
exactly.
it's creating these opportunities for the NFL to play on Saturday night.
Vikings just got a pick off Russell Wilson.
So is that game over?
No, there's still about 6 minutes left, but it very well could be because I believe they're right at midfield.
So it's at least a field goal of a good kicker.
Yeah, which they have Dan Bailey, so it's probably a field goal if they get a first down or two. We'll see.
And does that make it a 2-score game?
Right now it's a 5, so no, it'd still be a 1-score game. Still be 8 points.
2-point conversion, yeah. And with Russell Wilson, that's 8 points. That's not hard.
Yeah, so we got a good finish on for this game coming up. And I think what we're gonna do, since we're probably gonna wrap up right now anyway, I think what we'll do is we'll talk Sunday night football, we'll talk Monday and Tuesday night football once we get to Thursday, and then we'll preview all the games like we normally do and talk Thursday night football.
Sounds good
for sure. Because now with the upcoming weeks too, we're gonna have a lot of NBA offseason stuff. I know the NHL has been fucking crazy. I don't even follow NHL, but I know it's been
the NHL. Yeah, they're saying like a third of the league got reshuffled.
Alexander Madison just had like a 25-30 yard run.
So is the game over, or they're gonna get at least 3 points?
They're at least gonna get 3. So yeah, I'm excited for NBA offseason. Obviously, MLB. We're coming up on the that we're in the championship series for both leagues, so we're coming up on World Series for that. That's going to be an interesting offseason as well. So there's going to be a lot to talk about.
Get ready in the NBA for a lot of short-term deals because the idea of the cap changing might get pushed back a year or two because of COVID. So we don't know where that lies right now. So keep an eye out for that. And there could be a lot more trades this offseason than we were expecting because there's not going to be as many people signing. So because there's a lot of contracts signed last season, a lot of teams don't want to pay anymore.
Yeah, for sure. So that's going to do it for us this week. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at FR Podcast. Follow me at Howard J. Dingers. Follow Hanson at Hanson McElvain. Follow the other podcast, one more last one, on iTunes, Spotify, Twitter, Instagram, everything. Go check that out. We've been having a lot of fun with that, a lot of success with that. I'm very happy with that podcast right now. Thursday night. We'll talk Thursday night football and all these other primetime games from the end of week 5 here. And we'll also preview week 6 as we do. So thank you for listening. We will see you later this week.